Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is Three Buck Theater, and horror movies over the span of the last, oh God, feels like half decade, maybe a little bit, a little bit before then. No, maybe a decade ago, with 2007's Paranormal Activity, have kind of had this massive resurgence. Some good, some bad, but a lot of them are very, very, very popular. A lot of them have gone on to make a great deal of money. Look at, well, the Conjuring universe, right? Warner Brothers has put together a series of films that are low budget and have grossed over $1 billion. And they are going to keep going. Hell, Annabelle 3 was announced with was it Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson reprising their roles from The Conjuring 1 and Conjuring 2 in that movie. A movie about a doll that's not very good has gotten a third film, and it's brought some pretty decent talent along with it. I'm not kidding. The guy who made Mortal Kombat Annihilation, yeah, that movie from 1997 that is only good to watch while high, made Annabelle, and it's going into its third movie with some big talent attached. I don't get it. But that's not what I want to talk about. I'm talking about horror in general, more predominantly, more specifically, Jason Blum in Blumhouse Pictures. I love what this guy does. When it comes to horror, he gets it. When it comes to making good movies, he gets it. He's able to cobble together enough money and talent to, well, basically surpass all the odds. And as a result of that, he's had unparalleled success. I mean, going as far as to have Get Out nominated for Best Picture and actually be, I think, Best Original Screenplay winner for Jordan Peele at the Oscars this year. So he's not only made a ton of money, he's now an awards winner, which is a pretty big feat. But that can all kind of blow away depending on how this story plays out with the media. And that is going to be, well, a quote he made when in regards to the fact they've never had a female director behind the camera. Just look at this title here from IndieWire, where it says Jason Blum says he's trying to make a horror film directed by a woman, but there aren't a lot of female directors. And the truth of the matter is, he's not wrong on that one. But the way that the title is written, the way that a lot of people online have been taking the story, is that he's just attacking female directors, that he's saying that there's not a lot of them. I would argue that when it comes to feature films, yes, there's not that many. But when you look at TV, there are a great deal, and you could find a lot of the talent to bring over into the world. Now, the article here does go on to say, the horror genre has defined the success of Blumhouse Productions ever since the company's Paranormal Activity became one of the most profitable films ever made in 2007. While the company, led by Jason Blum, has unparalleled success, the studio has failed to produce any horror movies directed by female filmmakers over the last 11 years. Polygon editor Matt Patches recently informed Blum about the statistic during an interview for Halloween, to which Blum assured the studio has actively been searching for female talent, saying, "We've always been trying to do that. We're not trying to do it because of recent events. We've always been trying. There's not a lot of female directors, period, and even less who are inclined to do horror. I'm a massive admirer of the Babadook director Jennifer Kent. I've offered her every movie we've had available, and she's turned me down every time." So what does that tell you? That tells you that Blum has actively been looking for trying to get females to direct movies. Now, I would argue that what he hasn't done in this regard is probably go to the indie world. And there's a lot of up and coming female directors in the indie world that might be willing to tackle a horror project with the shoestring budget. But that being said, are there a lot of female directors out there that want to make horror? Horror is a very specific genre, right? There's the female directors I knew in LA mostly did romantic stuff. They mostly did dramas. That's where their heart and their passion was. I'm not saying they wouldn't do a horror film. It's also not that far to go from drama to horror, it just depending on some jump scares and really just lighting and blood. You could take almost any story and turn it in any romantic movie and turn it into a horror film with just a couple changes, because love is essentially one never-ending nightmare. Right? Think about it for a second. Think about it. Think about how many romantic movies you've seen that could easily be turned into a horror by just one or two plot changes. It really just depends on who's writing it, who's producing it, who's directing it, and if they're able to come together. But it seems like while they've been trying to make this work, it just hasn't gone very well for them. In fact, he goes on to say that he's offered numerous projects to Lee Janiak, who directed the 2014 horror film Honeymoon. Janiak confirmed that she met with Blumhouse, but she was never able to make it happen because of scheduling conflicts. And she wants to work together with him sometime soon, which makes sense considering the fact that this is, you know, Blumhouse. There's like, I want to pitch movies to Blumhouse. I have a bunch of low budget horror ideas that I love to pitch to Blumhouse. And I've kind of subtly tweeted that at him a couple times, hoping that he would take a look. I'm thirsty. What can I say? But it says here, this is where it goes into SJW territory. Blumhouse may be lacking when it comes to female directors in its horror films, but Blum said it doesn't mean the company has never sought out creative advice from female talent. David Gordon Green's upcoming Halloween is an example. Even though the film was directed by a man, Blum relied heavily on Jamie Lee Curtis. And that actually probably makes a fair amount of sense. They were able to, I think, through Jake Gyllenhaal, get Jamie Lee Curtis to come on board. Jake Gyllenhaal is kind of like the movie whisperer. He's also the reason why Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool happened. Basically, pay attention to whatever Jake Gyllenhaal is doing behind the scenes. I want to know more what he's doing behind the scenes. But anyway, it makes sense. You don't want to have a Halloween movie without having Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, Halloween, what was it? Halloween Resurrection was the one where she died. And it was just like Busta Rhymes karate kicked or crane kicked Michael Myers into a Christmas tree. It was a stupid movie. But this takes it back. This probably goes back through Jamie Lee Curtis telling her, like, look, this is a story I want to tell. I want to tell this old story of Laurie Strode to kind of finish it, even though we've learned now that John Carpenter has his plans for sequels if the movie does well. And the movie is currently looking to gross approximately $65 million opening weekend. And you bet your ass I'm going to go see it as soon as I can. I'm very excited to see it, to be honest with you. Now, he goes on to say here that I was very reluctant to do the movie without her. Her involvement is very important to me. And in retrospect, I just don't think there's been any version of the movie that would really have worked anywhere as this one does without her. Now, Curtis, who Blum says is a very powerful creative leader, reprises her role as Laurie Strode, but also serves as an exec producer, which means involved in the script development, casting, production, post-production, and marketing. See, and this is what he says. He says here, if one person embodies Halloween, it would toss that between Jamie Lee Curtis and John Carpenter. But because Jamie was on the set every day and she was much more involved in the day-to-day, so I think everyone kind of turned to her for leadership. And that's true. That's true. I mean, looking at Jamie Lee Curtis, if you get Jamie Lee Curtis on the set of Halloween, you know, I would hope if Martin Scorsese was directing Halloween, he would be like, all right, so how does this feel to you? Like, what's your thoughts on this? Because we want to make this as authentic as we can to being a sequel to the original, not number 2, which I get, but they want to make it, you know, and feel like that way. And she's lived this role for 40 years. So, you know, that she's going to very much have this powerful connection to it and be able to bring that expertise. And so while they may not have a female director behind the camera, they've clearly been able to work with female talent, in other places in order to get this desired success. It does finish up here by saying, while female directors have not been behind the camera for Blumhouse horror films, the studio has hired women to direct other genre films, including Karen Monocref for the supernatural drama The Keeping Hours and Catherine Hardwicke for the erotic thriller Plush. The Killing creator, Vina Sood, is the director of the upcoming thriller The Lie, and Blumhouse was behind Marty Noxon's Sharp Objects limited series on HBO this year. So they're still hiring female talent to do not horror films, but to do other genre projects, as well as to do projects that go to HBO. See, this is the interesting thing, is the title of the article here, and this, of course, is what's going around, is Jason Blum says he's trying to make a horror film directed by a woman, but there aren't a lot of female directors. And the way that Zach Sharf wrote the article, or the way he frames the title, and it maybe isn't him, but it's an editor at IndieWire, and they're very pro social justice warrior leaning. The way that they're going to approach it essentially is that, oh, Jason Blum is the bad guy. When if you read the interview, if you look at what he's saying, he's like, no, we've been trying. We haven't been successful yet. We've been trying to bring in the right talent, because it's not like going to anyone and giving them a job, right? This is what people don't understand when it comes to Hollywood. Now, you might hear people, and this is me kind of going on a soapbox, but you might hear people argue, oh, equality and equity. Equity, essentially, in this day and age, is just being given something, in my opinion. It feels like it, at least, based on the people I've heard make the arguments for it, right? Not about everyone kind of having equality in and of itself, but then some people being treated differently than others based upon the color of their skin, one way or another, is never good. So I view equity as something that is not earned entirely, but more given or entitled, which is a whole other argument. But that being said, looking at the situation with not a lot of female directors, you know, if he's having trouble finding them, that doesn't mean he's not looking. And if he's finding ones that are not suited for horror, then that's not going to work. Again, you have to match the right director to the right project, right? If you were to send Uwe Boll into making, I don't know, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, it's going to be a vastly different movie than what it was. And it maybe won't work as well as it did. Or if you were to send Boll into making My Cousin Vinny, it's not going to work. Not in the way that they wanted to. You have to pair the projects. He's been successful for 11 years. Unparalleled success by this article's own admission. So why attack him for not being inclusive enough or woke enough when he's been trying? He hasn't been able to match the right person with the right project yet. And at this point, let him trust his gut. He'll get there eventually, but don't shame him into doing something before he's ready or before the project's ready, because that's when it suffers. When you try to force these things through ham-fist equality, it doesn't work. Jason Blum, look, I am not criticizing a female director. I think that there are many of them out there that are quite talented, that do need more pushing in Hollywood, right? We do need to see more big budget films directed by everybody, I think, right? So there's that. But again, I want the right person for the right job. You know, Tim Burton's Dumbo seems like a bad idea because it's going to be more like gothic Tim Burton. But then again, his kind of gothic take on Alice in Wonderland made that movie over $1 billion. So Disney, to them, says that's the right person for the job. Guy Ritchie directing Aladdin's live action remake. Tell me how the guy who made Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is going to go on to go do Aladdin. Again, I don't know, but somehow they figured that out. And so that's what Blum is doing right now. He's trying to find the right female director for the right project. And that's how these businesses stay making money. And when you got people like Zach and other SJWs out there that are trying to push this narrative that he's being sexist or misogynistic or bigoted because hasn't found the right person yet for the job, then that just diminishes everything else he's done. And it diminishes all the other high-profile female hires he's had for other genre films, as also this article states. That's why this article and this attack on him at this point, from what I've seen, are generally BS, and I don't condone it at all. This is not a bad person. Don't treat him like a bad person because he hasn't hired a female director, even though he has tried multiple times, and it just didn't really work out. Hollywood is nothing if not unpredictable. Projects fall through all the time. We know this, we accept this, we move on. Stop trying to shoehorn equality in places where it doesn't necessarily need to happen. It's going to work itself out in its own right. Don't be a jerk. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that one. Anyway, if you guys got this far, let me know your comments. What do you think of Blum and Blumhouse Productions? Do you like the movies? Do you not like the movies? Let me know down in the comments. If you made it this far, type Blumhouse into the chat so I know you guys got there, and I will definitely talk to you soon. Please also thumbs up the video and subscribe. Have yourself a great day, guys, and peace out.